Thank you for joining us for this special edition on France 24. Over the next hour, we're going to be broadcasting live from Barcelona, where François Picard, his guests and our team on the ground are standing by to give us an in-depth look at today's developments in Catalonia. And as we expected, the region's unilateral referendum on independence has led to some chaotic scenes, with widespread acts of civil disobedience being met with a heavy-handed police response. Central authorities had warned that they would use security forces to block the process, rejected as illegal and unconstitutional. But defiant local officials have gone ahead with the poll, evading Madrid's best efforts to thwart the vote with a series of backup strategies that have allowed thousands of electors to cast their ballot. However, as you're seeing in those pictures, violent clashes did erupt at a number of polling stations, and hundreds of people are reported injured. Calling Spain the shame of Europe, the Catalan leadership is now threatening to take legal action in the international courts. And today's images have sparked outrage in Barcelona and beyond. Before I hand you over to François, let's take a look at the day's events.
Of defiance, would-be voters in Girona faced down a line of riot police who were ordered to stop the referendum from going ahead. In Barcelona, anger boiled over. Pro-independence protesters showed off injuries they say were caused by police.
We're blocking a street, and they could have tried to get us out peacefully, taking us by the arm. But what did they do? They hit us with batons and shot at us with rubber bullets.
This is shameful. I am Catalan. I am from Barcelona, and today it is the saddest day we've seen in this city. We have never seen this level of repression. It's like we're in Franco's era again. This is like a dictatorship.
But in many cities and towns, the vote was able to go ahead peacefully. Polling stations were packed.
It's not fair because more than 80% of the people of Catalonia want to vote, and that's what counts. It doesn't matter if they want to vote yes or no. When more than 80–90% is asking for it, you need to give it to them.
Right now, I feel really happy, although I'm also worried because, well, let's see what happens. It's a mixture of hope and fear.
Here we've been able to vote fine, but it's shameful what they've done, trying to stop us from voting. To vote is to be free.
Whatever the result of the vote, the Madrid government says it has no intention of recognising it.
Well, of course, these events and the divisive issue at their core are having repercussions across Spain. In Madrid this evening, tens of thousands of people have gathered for rival demonstrations on the capital's Plaza del Sol. Well, let me hand over now to François Picard, who's hosting this evening's special edition from Barcelona's Plaza de Catalunya. And François, I can see behind you there are massive crowds gathered there too.
Yeah, Nadia, we're coming up on 8 p.m. and the uncertainty at the point at which the polls are supposed to close is just as high as it was when they opened. All day long here in the Catalan capital, it's been a cat-and-mouse game between Spanish national police and citizens intent on voting. How many people actually voted is anyone's guess at this time. We could have more drama later on, with many expecting the Spanish police to come in and seize the ballots while being counted. So it's the night is far from over. We haven't heard yet from the Spanish Prime Minister. That could be coming up in the coming minutes. If it is, you'll hear Manuel Rajoy's remarks right here live on France 24. Now, as you were saying, Nadia, the crowds filling up this Plaza de Catalunya. Behind me, they have a big screen showing the Catalan language television station TV3, which has had coverage not just from Barcelona, but all the big cities around Catalonia. And we have a standoff, and it leaves us with a lot of uncertainty and a day that surprised many. Let's say hello right now to our first guest. He's a member of the European Parliament. He hails from the same party as the mayor of Barcelona, and we'll talk a little bit more about her in a moment. Ernest Urtasun, many thanks for being with us here on France 24. Are you surprised, first of all, by the way it unfolded today?
I am shocked. I think there is a general feeling in Barcelona of shock of how the Spanish government decided to block the referendum by means of violent police action. I think that was not expected, and I think that it was absolutely not proportionate at all. I mean, one could agree with the referendum or not. We were ourselves very critical on how the Catalan government dealt with the referendum, but the aggression, the violence against young people, against old women in the poll stations, that was absolutely unacceptable, and that's the reason why we are calling, and the mayor has been saying that during the journey, we are calling for Mariano Rajoy, for the Prime Minister, to immediately resign.
Tell me a bit, before we get back to your call, tell me a bit about your day. What did you do this morning? Where did you go?
Well, my day this morning, I was, of course, in the morning following closely the journey. Since I saw the action of the Spanish police, I went immediately to the poll station to see what was going on. And I think we were all together in solidarity, people that are in favor of independence, people against independence like myself, but all in solidarity in front of the situation. And at the end of the day, I decided to vote. I was doubting myself about voting because I wasn't sure about that referendum, but I think many people like me at the end went to the polls in protest because of the actions of the Spanish government.
What did you vote?
My vote was a blank vote because I don't recognize that as a referendum, but I don't think this is not what matters today. What matters today is that we should be united against the repression of the Partido Popular. I don't have an impression that the results would matter that much tonight. What would matter is the general reaction in Catalonia against the repressive measures of the Spanish government, and there will be a unified call for him to resign. This is what will matter tonight, I think.
Unified call for him to resign in Catalonia. How about in the rest of Spain?
Well, Pablo Iglesias was just on screen. He made a press conference in Madrid. He was also calling for the Spanish government to resign.
Pablo Iglesias, the leader of Podemos, which is the movement that was born from the Indignados, and to a certain degree, your party is the child of that. After that huge financial crash that you had here in Spain, those big protests, your party rose up through that. You're elected as a member of the European Parliament in 2014. The mayor defied the odds by winning. She's, at the beginning, was somebody who was called the idea of a referendum a sham. The fact that she, at the end, said the vote should take place, some have accused her of political opportunism.
What are we saying since the beginning is that the situation in Catalonia will only be unblocked once there is an agreed referendum like the Scottish did and like the agreement of Mr. Cameron and Mr. Salmon did in the case of Scotland and Great Britain. I think the only way of solving that in Catalonia is through an agreed referendum, a legal referendum, and that is our position. We are not an independentist party, but we think that the Catalans should have the right to decide. This is very clear for us. In relation to this referendum right now, we have been saying since the beginning that it didn't have the necessary guarantees in order to respect the will of the Catalan people. But this is not a reason for the Spanish government to act as they did. I mean, they could have let the vote to happen today. Everybody knew it was not going to be a binding vote. Everybody knew that. We could have had like a mass protest day, like people voting in the ballots, peacefully, like everybody did today. But the reaction and the violence, this is what actually is today unacceptable.
So what happens if the Separatists make good on their threat or their pledge, if you will, depending on which side you're on, to declare independence after this vote? What's your message to the Separatists?
No, what I think today is that we have to wait until tomorrow to see what is the official reaction of the Catalan government. The Catalan president will be on a press conference later on tonight, so we will wait to see what he has to say. Same thing for the Spanish Prime Minister. What we believe is that there are no grounds after today for a unilateral declaration of independence. That we are convinced of that. What we have to do now is to be united in Catalonia, to ask Mariano Rajoy to negotiate a legal referendum. And what we will ask as well is the European Commission and other European partners to tell Rajoy that what happened today was unacceptable and that he has to negotiate a legal referendum. We have plenary session in Strasbourg in the European Parliament next week. tomorrow we will demand a specific debate with the European Commission on what happened today and on the way forward in Catalonia. I think it's very important also that our European partners tell Rajoy that this is no way of acting, that this is a political issue to be dealt with politics, and that we need a binding referendum, a legal one, agreed with the Spanish government.
After the financial crash, after the bankruptcy that hit Catalonia, how did the conversation go from being one about better redistribution of wealth, reforming finance, to a discussion about nationalism? What happened?
Well, I think that there are two separate things.
Two separate things?
I think there are two separate things. The crisis in Catalonia comes before the crisis. Actually, it's a very long story, but there was an attempt by former Prime Minister Zapatero to reform the Catalan autonomy statute in order to give more competences to the Catalan government. We agreed to that. We supported that new agreement with the Spanish government. And actually, it was the Spanish right wing, the party of Mr. Rajoy, that took that agreement to the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court declared not valid many of the things that the Catalan people had already voted in referendum. And that opened a big political crisis in Catalonia. So this is one side of the story. Of course, this happened in the middle of the economic crisis. And then we had also the cuts. We had also the problems with the social services. For sure, this had an impact as well. But I want to be very clear, what happens in Catalonia is not only a consequence of the financial crisis. There are more profound grounds, and it comes a bit earlier than the financial crisis.
A little bit earlier than the financial crisis. Again, we get back to, and it's the question we'll be asking all our panelists, what happens tomorrow? You're asking the European Union to step in. There's another option, of course, which is that there's a crisis all around. Snap elections here and snap elections nationally for Spain.
Well, we think that Mariano Rajoy should resign. And I want to be very clear as well, Mariano Rajoy has no majority in the Spanish parliament. More important, last week there was a vote in Spanish parliament on whether the Spanish parliament was supporting what the government was doing in Catalonia. And it was rejected. So Mariano Rajoy did not have even the majority in the Spanish Congress to do what he did today here in Catalonia. So what should we do as opposition parties in Madrid right now as well is to push for a motion of censorship and try to replace Mariano Rajoy in government. But the big question here is, what are the Social Democrats going to do? And this is also a question for them. Will you go for a motion of censorship in Madrid in the coming days? I think they should, and we should work together for another government in Madrid.
Ernesto Urtasun, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on France 24 during this special edition. And as we were just saying, we're waiting for political reactions. He mentioned the one of the opposition socialists. We're also waiting to hear on the Prime Minister. Again, that could happen very fast, and you'll be covering it live when it does. And as well, fresh reactions from the President of Catalonia, who spoke earlier.
It is obvious that the unjustified, irrational, irresponsible violence used by the Spanish state is not dampening the wish of Catalans to be able to vote peacefully and democratically. It also makes it clear in the eyes of those who still had doubts and in the eyes of the world what's at stake here today. Today, there have been some shameful incidents which will stay with us forever.
No ha habido referéndum. There has been no referendum, nor the appearance of one. It has never been sensible to discuss this, and it makes no sense to continue. I've asked the Catalan regional government and the parties who support it to stop with this irrationality. I ask them to accept from this moment now that which was never legal is clearly impossible to achieve. To continue with this farce makes no sense. It will go nowhere and should be put to an end immediately.
And you couldn't have more diametrically opposed messages from the President of Catalonia and from the government in Madrid. Somebody who's been following it throughout is France 24's Chris Moore. Chris, tell us where you are.
We're on Plaza Catalunya. There's a relatively sparse crowd gathering here for what could have been a celebration, but as the rain starts to fall, the mood here is pretty subdued. People have been watching local TV coverage, much of it featuring today's event, much of it featuring those clashes between Spanish police and people outside polling stations, images of Spanish police entering those polling stations, confiscating election equipment, and in many cases pretty aggressively, physically dragging people out of the building. Opinion here in Catalonia towards independence is divided. It's divided too towards the various pro-independence parties, but most people here wanted this referendum to go ahead in good conditions, and the images we were just talking about now are the kind which tend to harden people's opinions.
Yeah, and we're seeing live images, Chris Moore, of the vote counting taking place in polling stations here in Barcelona. Of course, some in the pro-independence camp are worried that police are going to swoop in again and sweep up those ballot papers. Chris, have you been struck by how heated it got, and you saw it firsthand at those polling stations?
That's right, yes, we followed the countdown to Sunday over the last couple of days. As part of that, we were in touch with people who'd occupied schools to allow the vote to go ahead, and the communications they were sending us overnight and into the morning, really expressing their worries about whether the police were going to come. As it turned out today, as we now know, in some cases the answer was emphatically yes, in others not so much. There's two sides to every story. There are also images of people who've been able to go out and vote. But obviously it's been a chaotic, disrupted process. It's very difficult to predict what kind of results this referendum will give. And in terms of the political impasse, which it really embodies, very difficult to predict where we'll go from here.
Chris Moore reporting live from down below at Plaza de Catalunya. Many thanks. We'll be checking in with you a little bit later on. And we've been talking about what's been a long day. Somebody who's been witness and taken an active part in this long day is Marta Rosique. She's 21 years old, university student. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you to you.
You're studying journalism and political science. You said you were up at 6 a.m.
Exactly. We were in the university. We occupied the university 1 week and 2 days ago in order to have a place where we could get organized and mobilize the students' movement. We were actually on Thursday 80,000 students in the street mobilizing in order to have the referendum. And today the university has also become a very key place in order to mobilize people to go to the polling stations.
Yeah, you're a spokesperson for Universitats per la República, a student activist group. Why is it that there seems to be a bit of a generation gap when it comes to this separatist question? It's the young people who are more in favor of independence.
I wouldn't say the young people are more in favor, but the young people are very active in it. And they understand that it is something that will affect us a lot. It is also our role to be active and to mobilize in the street and show the world that the young generation wants a change, that this change needs to happen, and that in the end it is all about democracy, and the young people is next to the democracy and supporting the Catalan people for anything that happens.
So is this vote legitimate? Because we saw today people unable to vote, others afraid to show up. Will this vote count?
It is legitimate. We've seen many people all over Catalonia, not only defending the polling stations, but also going to vote. Myself, I went to vote, and in the end, we already won. We already showed the world, and I hope that we did, that all that we really need is to decide the future of our country, and that the best way to do it is the same way that we've always done it, in a very pacific, civic, and democratic way.
Is this democratic, though? Because there are people, again, who said that they don't want to do it in this way. This is too chaotic, and they want to have a more cool-headed discussion about where Catalonia goes.
it is definitely democratic. It's about listening to what people think about the future of Catalonia. And the chaos has been created by the Spanish state by using their forces and by vulnerating our human rights. Today we've seen many people that have been injured, more than 450 people that did, and it's also like we've seen also children and old people being injured by the Spanish police. Is that democratic? Because I don't think it is.
Should the president of Catalonia declare independence later?
If the referendum says so, and if the Catalan government considers that it should be like that, we will be supporting the Catalan government.
You'll be supporting independence?
We would.
What happens then, though? Because the European Union has made it crystal clear that they won't be welcoming you as a member. You have to get to the back of the line if you want to join the EU. It will send panic, say, investors in the markets. How will Catalonia get by if it isn't done in an orderly way?
We really believe in the work of the Catalan government and especially on the Catalan people. We've been supporting them. We've seen and we've shown that all that we want is just to have a new state where we can organize ourselves, where we don't have this repression, where we don't see our human rights being vulnerated. All that we want is to show the world that we see independence as a window of opportunities, and we'll do our best so that this happens.
Window of opportunity, how is it right now at the university with students who don't support the independence cause? What we've been speaking to people, and what has shocked them, is that in a few short years, Catalonia has become much more polarized. Families have become divided. People not speaking to one another. Is there a growing split between Catalan speakers and Spanish speakers?
That's a lie, actually. Families haven't been divided. In my family, my brother is against the independence, and today he was supporting me for mobilizing in the streets. He sees it in a way that it's all about democracy, about explaining to the people and really learning what people think about the future of our country. Families haven't split at all. This is not a problem at the moment. We're actually being very much united in order to vote, and that's what unites us all. In the students' movement, we've seen that a lot. A lot of students that weren't for independence, they have also been with us defending the referendum. It's not about a yes or about no. It's about showing what we think and taking a paper ballot, putting it in a ballot, and therefore seeing it in a very proper way and in a very civic way. And the Spanish state has shown today that they don't want to listen to people, that they are scared of the people, and that they don't want to hear us.
All right, Marta Rosique, many thanks for speaking with us here on France 24. Best of luck. Are you going to be back in class on Monday?
I'm not going to be back in class. I'm sure I will have to be active. We'll see how it goes, but the student movement will continue being mobilized, and we have to be there.
Best of luck to you. Thank you so much for speaking with us. So there you have it, the point of view of somebody who says that the vote was democratic, that they should be heading towards independence for Catalonia. Of course, many people see it a different way. We're expecting remarks from the Spanish Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy. And as you could see, with both of our guests here, one who's not in favor of independence and the other who is, both expressing a lot of anger at the Spanish Prime Minister. And you can see live images there of where that press conference is going to start. We're going to bring in our next guest at this particular point in time. Ferran Brunet, come on over. There's it. I don't know, maybe our cameraman could show you. We're watching live images now there of the Spanish Prime Minister who is entering the hall to give his address. We heard from his deputy earlier. He hasn't spoken at all during the weekend. Let's take a listen.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. I have wanted to speak to you today in my capacity as head of government. The president of the government of Spain, a great nation, one of the oldest in Europe and one of the most developed countries in the world. A mature, advanced, kind and tolerant democracy, but also firm and determined that the state of law and the rule of law be totally respected. That's our nation. And I've always believed that my main obligation as president of the government was to make sure that the law was complied with and to protect and to guarantee democracy, but also to make sure that I would protect concord amongst all Spaniards, to be the president of all the Spaniards, those who voted for me, those who would never vote for me. And this is what I have always done. And in fact, this is what I want to talk to you about tonight. I can tell you at this time, quite categorically, what all of you already know, and what we have been able to see throughout the day. Today, there hasn't been a self-determination referendum taking place in Catalonia. Today we have seen that the rule of law in Spain is being kept alive strongly, and it responds to those who contravene that rule of law and reacts to those who wish to subvert it. A rule of law that uses all of its legal resources faced with provocations. And it is doing that serenely and efficiently. Today, no consultations have been held, just a staging, just another episode in a strategy against democracy and legality in the country. It is therefore an irresponsible political strategy, thanks to which some have wanted to hijack the voice of those who don't think like them. And they have violated the most fundamental rights, and they have gone beyond the limitations of democratic behavior. We've been able to see in the parliament, in the Catalan parliament, on the 6th and the 7th of last month, where they wanted simply to do away with the statute and therefore do away with all the democratic rights of the opposition. To pretend that such arbitrariness and such abuse, to pretend that that is democracy, is a mockery of the very essence of democracy. We have seen forms of behavior and attitudes which are repugnant to all Democrats and which should never be repeated again in Spain. Indoctrination of children, harassment of judges, harassment of journalists, just to mention a few. Let me make one thing abundantly clear. Those who are responsible for these facts, those who are responsible for what has happened today and has brought us to this particular situation today are precisely those who have promoted the violation of legality and breaking away from peaceful coexistence. Do not look for any other culprits. You have them right there. I keep in mind all of the Catalans who were lied to. They were told that they would be taking part in a vote which was an illegal vote with no guarantees at all. I can very well understand that they may feel frustrated today, and I'm very sorry for that. But I will also have to tell you that the right channel in order to discuss your political claims cannot be found in breaking away from legality, but in a real, loyal dialogue where the voices of everyone can be heard. Let me make one thing clear to the whole of Spain. The greatest majority of the Catalonian people have not wanted to take part in this secessionist farce. This is unarguable. Today, the great majority of Catalans have shown that they're law-abiding people in the noblest sense of the word. They have turned their backs to this referendum, and in doing so, they have taken the side of democracy. They have shown themselves to be side by side with democracy in peaceful coexistence. Very clearly, they have shown that they're civic-minded and that they fully respect the principles upon which our coexistence is based. They've been able to withstand the onslaught of populism. And all the Spaniards welcome their attitude and their reaction. Such respect for peaceful coexistence is what has made it possible to build and to continue building a nation that has been able to form a full democracy and a common determination for well-being and progress. In the course of our very long shared history, we Spaniards have been able to overcome the most painful differences among us and also some difficulties that seem to be totally impossible to overcome. We have shown to the world that we've been able to reinvent ourselves with every single step. And the government, as you know, all throughout has held that this referendum was not going to take place. And they knew it months ago. Those who were promoting this challenge already knew this months ago. And this very week they admitted that, and they recognized that yesterday quite clearly, and today they have seen it with their own eyes. They knew that this referendum was illegal. They knew that this referendum was impossible. But they decided to go ahead nonetheless, and to therefore perpetrate a real attack on democracy and on the rule of law without caring about anything and about anyone. This was a premeditated, conscious attack to which the state has reacted with firmness and with serenity. This referendum wanted to liquidate the Spanish constitution and to declare independent a part of our country without taking into account the opinion of the rest of the Spaniards. Well, this referendum has not taken place. We have avoided it on the basis of the law and with the support of Democrats, with the determination of the courts, and with the behavior of the security and forces of the state. Here, I should like to thank all the political parties who have shown their loyalty to the state under these very difficult circumstances, and also to the judges and the prosecutors who have applied the law without any fear of the anti-democratic harassment to which they have been subjected over the past few days. And very especially, I pay tribute to the forces of security of the state, to the National Police and to the Civil Guard, because through their attitude, they have respected their obligations and the mandate given to them by Spanish justice. It would have been easier, obviously, for everybody to look elsewhere while such serious attacks were being perpetrated upon our legality. However, they have not done so. On the contrary, they have responded, all of them, with loyalty to their commitment to democracy and to the rule of law. I should also like to stress the very strong support given by the European Union and the whole of the international community, which throughout have been able to understand that what was at stake here was our own constitutional order. And I would like you to know that we have done what we had to do. We are the government of Spain, and I am the president of the government of Spain, and I have therefore taken upon me to totally fulfill my responsibilities. We have complied with our obligations, and from the very beginning we have been acting on the basis of the law and only the law, and we have been able to show that our democratic state does have the necessary resources to defend itself from such a serious attack like the one that they have wanted to perpetrate through this illegal referendum. Democracy has prevailed today because the Constitution has been upheld. From the very beginning of this senseless process and throughout today, the day of today, we have seen that some people have wanted to turn their backs to the law, to coexistence, and to public order. However, what they have found in front of them is the cool-headedness of those who know that their laws, their liberties, their rights are protected by the law, guaranteed by the courts, and supported by the rule of law. All of us today have found a reason to deposit our trust in democracy. This process has failed, a process that has only sown division, pitted people against each other, wanted to create disturbances in the streets and provoke undesirable situations. This has only been a blow to our coexistence which is a good that we have to try and recover as quickly as possible. I'm saying this as clearly as possible. I'm not going to close any doors. I have never done that. That's not my way of interpreting politics. I've always been open to an honest and sincere dialogue, but always within the bounds of the law and always within the framework of democracy. Coexistence in Spain has always been based upon agreement, upon accords, and this is the way it should continue existing. There has been a desire for concord over the past 40 years, and this cannot be driven away simply because of the blackmail of some people. There have been many, many opportunities given to them in order to give up their illegal purposes, but they haven't done so. I have tried to convince them. I have tried over and over again for them to listen. But they have not heard. They have not listened. There was every reason for them not to continue with this senseless endeavor, but they have not wanted to do so. Let's hope that they will do it now. Let's hope that they will not remain within their own era and to give up this path, which clearly, as has been seen today, leads nowhere. Tomorrow, we have to begin to reestablish constitutional normalcy. We will be doing this, as always, firmly, with a cool head, and also with a show of unity. At least this is what I want. This is why I want the support of all of the parties who defend our constitutional foundations. And this is why I want to convene all of the political forces that are represented on the parliament in order to put our heads together to start reflecting upon the future, a future that we all have to face together. And also, tomorrow, I will ask to go and see the Congress of Deputies personally. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something that we must draw as a lesson from what has happened today, is that Spanish democracy is as strong as ever. Its institutions are efficient. Its public servants are loyal, and there's unity and responsibility shown by the greatest majority of the Spanish citizens. These are very strong foundations for the Spaniards and for the Catalans as well, so that we can continue after so many centuries working together along the path of freedom, justice, progress, and democratic coexistence. Thank you very much.
You can hear the jeers behind me from a good part of the crowd here in Plaza de Catalunya. You're watching a special edition here on France 24. You just heard the remarks there by the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, speaking for the first time publicly in several days. He said he would convene a special session of Parliament on Monday. Usually Parliament's question time is Wednesday. He also said that he wants to meet with all the leaders of the political parties represented in Madrid in the Spanish Parliament. Before that, though, a long litany against those who organized this independence referendum. He said at one point, today was not a self-determination vote. It was just a staging, a travesty against democracy, the words of Mariano Rajoy. We're going to talk about it now with our guest, Ferran Brunet, treasurer of Societat Civil Catalan and a professor of economics at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. Thank you for speaking with us here. Let's start with your reaction to the Prime Minister's speech.
Well, he is trespassing decisions to tomorrow or after tomorrow, perhaps. to have an agreement with other parties. But I think this, most of the Catalans, we need solutions quickly. Today this was really no referendum, but a big performance with a lot of people in the streets for cameras, profiting from the international attention to the Catalan problem. And this is the continuation of a long-term situation. I think that tomorrow probably the financial markets also will react to this instability. Spain is a big country of the European Union. Catalonia is one of the more important regions, the more industrial region, and this is affecting not only Spain. In this sense, the risk is for all European countries.
All right, so you and your organization, Dead Set Against Independence, should point out you're Catalan, born in Barcelona, and there are a lot of people who think like you. You stayed home. You stayed home. You stayed home. Did Mariano Rajoy help or hurt your cause by sending in the police?
Well, this today was a trap. In fact, we were expecting that the regional police do the task of closing the polling stations the days before. They do not this. The polling stations were opened, and the regional police said do nothing about this. Then the National and Guardia Civil police it's not well received by these people, and this is a key element, the position of the regional policy. Because of this, I think here we are in a really huge institutional conflict between a regional government who is behind these people in the streets and the Spanish government, and also between the regional policy and the national Spanish policy and Guardia Civil.
All right, we're seeing live images if you're just joining us here on France 24. It is October the 1st, 2017, an independence referendum that turned into, well, a cat and mouse game in many places between the Spanish National Police, our guest Fernand Brunet pointing out that the regional police, the Mossos, refusing to step in against the local people. Is that going to be something that's going to be hard to heal? We already saw, we're standing actually just a few meters away from the Ramblas, where we had that terror attack in August. And one of the complaints that was leveled is there's not enough cooperation between the Mossos and the National Police, not enough intelligence sharing.
This was the situation for these terrorist attacks, but also we saw this today. And this is really, in point of view of democratic life, it's very important.
Is it does it mean irreconcilable differences if you have two police forces that are rivals?
No, I think that this is a problem only of the chief of this regional police. And because of this, the Catalans, the normal Catalans, we expect a change on these contradictions between policies.
You expect a change, yes. But is the change not more deep-rooted? What with the Catalan language becoming more and more prevalent in the background, we're listening to the Catalan language television station that's being played out over this square. There is this sense that Catalonia is drifting further away from Spain.
No, most of the Catalans, we are Spaniards, because this is a melange territory. Most of us, we have roots in other parts of Spain, naturally. And then this is a very evident movement because of the important propaganda of the regionalist government. But in fact, most of we Catalans, we are really Spaniards, and we like to solve this contradiction between a regional government outside the law, outside the Spanish law, but also outside the Catalan law and the Spanish government. We need to solve this contradiction because this is not a way to life.
All right, the rift between the police and the national police. We also saw today, it's been a strange day here in Barcelona. We saw the Barcelona Football Club, which is the most marketable and well-known product of this region, arguably the world's most popular sports club. And we saw them during warm-up wear Catalan jerseys. The police were not able to do crowd control, so no fans were allowed at the stadium. What's your reaction to that? FC Barcelona, before the match, obviously taking sides here with those jerseys.
The idea for Separatists was to use the match to show chants and positions against Spain and in favor of independence. Then this mixing between sports and politics is the worst. In the history, the European history, we have really strong moments in which there is a mix between sports and politics. The nationalists always they use sports for this.
Could you root for Barcelona still after this?
Oh yes. Most of we support our team. It's a local team, but also there are other teams in Catalonia. The Espanyol, for example, no? There are a lot of people who is followers of this other and other local teams. And then because of this, for the Barcelona team, it's very important to remain in the Spanish Liga. Naturally, the quality of Barcelona is because we play with other Spaniards, and then, well, finally, secession for sure will not occur. The Separatists are having not the majority. The Separatists are having not the law. The Separatists are having not a support, an international support, nor a Spanish support. And then secession will not occur. But the problem we are having, the Catalans, is the confrontation between us. It's not especially a confrontation with the other Spaniards, but between us.
The problem is
the occupation of this regional government by separatist people. No, you know, the separatist government is a mix between nationalist and very radical group. And then they are against the Spanish state.
All right, so the problem has to be solved locally, and there's no FC Barcelona without Real Madrid to play against. I want to thank you, Ferran Brunet, for being with us here on France 24. At this point in time, we heard the reaction of Ferran Brunet to that speech by Prime Minister Rajoy. Let's turn to our correspondent in Madrid, Sarah Morris. Of course, Sarah, there was the nuclear option. He didn't use it. And that's invoking Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution, which would have been to take over all the tasks of the Catalan regional government.
That's right, and one of the reasons he probably hasn't used it so far is because there's not a lot of clarity. Really, it's never been used in Spain, and there are similar articles in other European countries like Germany that have a similar type of constitution that don't allow regions to break away, don't allow regions to decide to have referendums, and they have a similar clause, but it's very untested territory, and it would be, because it's seen and dubbed as the nuclear option, it was felt by many people that would heighten tensions. There has been a virtual use of intervention in a way because, of course, the finances of Catalonia are being run by the Spanish tax office directly, and they're able to do that partly because the region is one of the most indebted in Spain and very reliant on extra funding that was created for the regions during the crisis. So that's one of the ways in which there's been some control exerted, although it didn't stop today that voting from taking place. Mariano Rajoy thanked Catalans that didn't turn out. In his speech, it seemed to me that he tried to play to various audiences, but one of the things he said is that many people ignored this referendum. They wanted to respect the law, and he thanked them. He also thanked the judges, he said, that had implemented the law, thanked the police officers, and he talked about harassment and said that he'd seen things happening that were revolting to any Democrat. He talked about children being brainwashed. Lots of people commented on the fact that children were taken down to the polling stations when there was the danger of clashes happening. But one of the other things that Mariano Rajoy seemed to do in that speech was appeal for unity in the parliament.
Appeal for unity in the parliament. Sarah, just very briefly, you heard there Ferran Brunet say that he fell into the trap of using force. We've heard people who support one nation, who are against independence, saying the best solution would be snap elections here in Catalonia and snap elections in Madrid. How is Mariano Rajoy? Is he damaged goods?
He's damaged, but we've written him off so many times, haven't we, Francois, that nobody would bet against him because he still is the largest group in the parliament. We heard Pablo Iglesias, the leader of Podemos, trying to make a play to get a no-confidence vote, saying that the socialists should take a stand after the scenes that we've seen today in Barcelona. And Mariano Rajoy saying that he wants the unity of the constitutional parties, and he may very well get that.
Sarah Morris, many thanks for that live update from Madrid. And as we heard some of our panelists mention, some people say that this push towards independence is born of the current standoff, of the politics in Madrid. Well, others argue this is something that's been brewing a lot longer. Siobhan Silk has more.
An autonomous region that perhaps wants to be much more. Catalonia has its own language, police force, flag, government and president, but for many that's not enough.
The idea of independence began in 1898, when Spain lost its last colonies of Cuba and the Philippines. For the Catalan elite and for the Catalan Republican movement, it was proof that Madrid was failing to protect Catalan interests.
Catalonia's history began in the Middle Ages with the county of Barcelona, a prosperous, proud and outward-looking state. It remained largely autonomous for centuries, but after backing the losing side in a royal succession war in the 18th century, Barcelona suffered a year-long siege that left deep scars. Catalonia fell directly under the rule of Madrid, but Catalan pride ran deep. By the 19th century, it was the premier industrial region of Spain.
C'est notamment l'industrie textile qui donne.
The textile industry in particular made Catalonia a pioneer in Spanish industry, and that's one of the historical reasons for the cultural difference, becoming an industrialized and modern region in a country that was otherwise deeply rural.
With industrial prosperity came a movement to revive Catalan culture, but the Franco dictatorship suppressed it. Books in the language were banned and burned. With Franco's death in 1975 and the return of democracy, Catalonia again became an autonomous region. Since then, it's continued to push for greater control of its own affairs. In 2006, Spain's socialist government expanded the region's powers, and for the first time the law called Catalonia a nation. The Conservative Party challenged this in court. 4 years later, Spain's Constitutional Court struck down the law. It said Catalonia was not a nation and its language couldn't supplant Castilian Spanish. The ruling sparked mass protests.
The motto of this protest is, "We are a nation. We will decide our own future." We are telling the state and the Supreme Court that regardless of how many laws they adopt, here in Catalonia we feel we are a nation, and nobody can stop it.
In the following years, celebrations on the 11th of September, the National Day of Catalonia, became a show of force for Catalan independence. In 2014, Catalan people voted in a non-binding independence referendum held in defiance of the Madrid government. Turnout was low, but the separatist vote won, and a year later, separatists emerged as the winners of the Catalan regional elections. The wave of separatist sentiment has continued to swell. According to some polls, 40% of Catalans are now in favour of independence.
All right, we're going to be talking in a moment about the history of that's brought us to this point with, well, I hope you don't mind the pun, a rock star of classical music, Jordi Savall, a composer and also a musician and conductor, of course. We'll be talking to you in a moment. First, though, let's cross over to France 24's Chris Moore is in the crowd. Chris.
That's right, the atmosphere is a little bit subdued down here this evening as people watch local news coverage of events unfolding. Been talking to a few people, including Barbara Perez, who is a 31-year-old from Barcelona. She was able to vote today, as she says, well, most people she knows, but they have quite strong opinions about how the police behaved. How do you feel about what the police did?
Well, that was, I'm feeling very sad. That was horrible to see and see the people like that, and the police hitting them was too much violence, and well, it's not the best thing you can see. And I'm feeling Catalan French because I'm French too, and my father is from Andalusia. And today I voted yes, not because I am independent, I never was, but because of what the police did today, because what the government, the Spanish government is doing right now is not understanding anything, or what is not acting like intelligent people. And that's what happened, that's what happens.
Thanks very much, Barbara. You heard there about how the way people feel about independence is often complex and nuanced, but how the way that the Spanish government has treated the run-up to the referendum and how the authorities behaved today has really coloured a lot of people's opinions. François.
Yeah, and we heard those calls of resign when Mariano Rajoy's speech was carried where you are. Chris Moore there in the square. We're at Plaza de Catalunya. You're watching France 24, live coverage of October the 1st, 2017, the day of an independence vote that was banned by Madrid, and that turned into a cat and mouse game between separatists and the Spanish National Police. We're talking about it in the company of Jordi Savall. How will history remember October 1st?
Well, I think it's a day that could change everything, because I think it's a day that we have demonstrated that the Catalan people are supporting the idea to know what we like to do by a democratic referendum. We cannot find a good balance between Spain and Catalonia without knowing exactly how many Catalans like to be in Spain like now, or how many Catalans like to change and have a different situation. And this is the first elementary thing. And I think what I have seen in the speech of Mr. Rajoy, he's not talking to the Catalans. He has forgot the 761 people was injured by the police. Not know about this. And what we have seen today with the violence of the police was terrible. It was something which is not acceptable in the European community.
Why is the rift growing between Catalonia and the rest of Spain?
Well, this is a long history, but basic, it's a history of the modern times, because the constitution we have in Barcelona was cut by the Constitutional Tribunal 10 years ago. And then from this 10 years ago is only negative things. And the Catalan people need respect, need the possibility to defend his language, his culture, his financial, his liberty.
So if there was more respect, there wouldn't be this push towards independence?
I think more respect means dialogue. And there was no dialogue. We have now 10 years, was only laws and only punishments about the politics. And this is not possible to have dialogue like this.
Jordi Savall, some have pointed the finger at separatist politicians, saying they're a little irresponsible because they're saying, hey, we're paying taxes so that people in Andalusia can drink beer. Is there a little bit of populism now with what's going on?
I think the essential thing is not economic. You know, this movement is very different from Scotland. Scotland are the politicians, they like to be independent. But in Catalonia, it's not the politicians has followed the people. We have a start, and the basic thing is the people. And the people is not thinking about money. You know, the rich people are anyway always in the paradise. You know, it's a matter of having the control of our culture, of our dignity, of our financial things, of our
But the people we saw waiting online to vote in the rain are middle-class people who pay taxes.
People can pay taxes. People, they are not happy with the situation. And they are not happy because we cannot, people from Spain come here and they don't respect that we have a different language, a different culture. I love Spain. I have a lot of friends and I feel home in Madrid, in Sevilla, everywhere. But we need from these people, from the Spanish government, to respect the Catalan. And today, if you like to have an intercultural dialogue, you have to respect the other culture and you have to listen to them.
So this works both ways, because I've heard the complaint that nowadays, if you don't speak Catalan in Catalonia, you're a little bit ostracized. There was a satirist by the name of Albert Boadin who said that people in Catalonia treat Spanish culture the way Franco treated Catalan culture.
It's not true. I know thousands of people. I speak Castellan with some of my friends, and everybody speaks Castellan. We don't make this difference.
But the younger generation who only speaks Catalan in school?
No. Everybody speaks Catalan, Spanish, English, or French. And also very important, we make never differences. The only thing we need, Catalan, it's a small language. There are not so many millions as the Castellan. And we need to protect the language, otherwise this language will disappear. We need to protect, making people clear that we have to learn this language. And for this, in the schools, you have to learn Spanish and Catalan, because otherwise the Catalan in 20 years or 50 years will be not speaking for anybody.
So how do you get that respect now? When you see that there's been this spiral, as you say, which started in 2010, how do you change this spiral? How do you get people to the table?
Well, I think the first thing is to stop all this persecution of the politicians. The politicians are commanded to work for Catalonia and for Catalans. And in this work, they are punished with enormous financial amounts and prison, everything. This is not possible. If you like to have dialogue, you cannot use the judges and the justice you have to talk politician. And this is now too many years the Spanish government, they don't talk as a politicians.
If the president of Catalonia declares independence, would that be a good thing?
I don't think it's a moment to do this, but also it's not a moment that we can say, okay, nothing but happens like the president say. I think we are at a moment we have to be clear. The only possibility to discuss a good agreement is to make a referendum, a legal referendum, like it was in Scotland, and giving the Spanish government the possibility to say, Catalans, if you stay with us, we will have this, this, and this. And the Catalan government says, if you want development, and then see what the people choose. I think it's only possible.
Jordi Savall, you're a globe-trotter, performing all around the world. Do you think of yourself as an ambassador for Catalonia, or?
I am official ambassador, cultural ambassador, and I feel I like to say I am Catalan because I love the Catalan, but also I love the Spanish culture. I love the Spanish literature, I love the Spanish music, and I feel I am a citizen of the world, and I feel home in Barcelona, in Madrid, in New York, in Sydney, or in Tokyo. This is the great advantage of the music, but always with acceptation of the culture of the others. Even if it's a smaller, always with respect.
And at home as well in Paris, because I see that you'll be performing Handel's Messiah at Versailles and at the Philharmonie de Paris. That's when are the dates?
They are in 18, 19 December this year.
We look forward to having you in the French capital conducting, and as you say, a little respect on both sides could go a long way. Once again, many thanks. Again, you heard Jordi Savall there mentioning how it's not about the money, but money is a big factor. Charles Pellegrin has more on that.
The crowded beaches of Barcelona and the Costa Brava, the bustling thoroughfare that is Las Ramblas. Last year, these major Catalonian attractions were visited by 18 million tourists. The region attracts a quarter of all foreign visitors to Spain. But tourism isn't the region's only asset. For many, Catalonia drives Spain's economy. Several large companies have their headquarters there, like clothing giant Mango, some major banks, and chemical companies. No surprise, then, that the region is by far the largest exporter of the country. It represents a fifth of Spain's gross domestic product, just a bit more than Madrid. And while unemployment affects a little over 13% of Catalans, that figure is lower than the Spanish average. But some business interests are concerned that this could change with the independence referendum. For instance, Spain's central bank has warned that there could be a negative impact on growth. Some international groups, Volkswagen for instance, had threatened to move their production elsewhere after the pro-independence movement won regional elections 2 years ago. There would also be uncertainty with regards to Catalonia's relationship to the European Union, where 65% of its exports end up. Catalonia also carries a heavy burden, its debt, worth over 75 billion euros and 35% of its GDP. Ratings agencies have given it a speculative grade, meaning that Catalonia does not have direct access to financial markets.
All right, and we're going to turn to our guest in a moment. And on this issue, Carlos Rivadavia, I'll be asking you what you think Madrid's stock market's going to be doing when it opens Monday morning. First, though, let's go back to France 24's Chris Moore. Chris.
That's right, we're on Plaza Catalunya. There's a relatively sparse crowd here. I guess what happened here tonight could at one point have been a celebration of what many people here in Barcelona see as an act of democracy. That was, of course, in the end, heavily disrupted, took place amid a pretty contentious atmosphere. People here were watching the news coverage on Catalan television of today's events. The biggest boos that you heard came whenever you saw the Spanish police, either the national police or the Guardia Civil being featured on the screen, that in the wake of those clashes and what they did in terms of dismantling polling stations. And also big boos, as you'd expect, for Mariano Rajoy as he spoke from Madrid. We've been covering the run-in to Sunday here for a couple of days here in Barcelona, and there are an enormous variety of opinions on the issues of independence, on secession, very different attitudes too towards the various parties that backed the Yes campaign. But in the end, the overall feeling is that most people here wanted this referendum to go ahead, and they wanted to go ahead in decent conditions. And there's a real sense of anger and frustration over that. And regardless of how people feel about independence, a real sense of bitterness and towards Madrid.
Yeah, and over the past hour, Chris, we've heard the full gamut of reactions or thoughts on what should happen next. Many thanks for that update from those who say that we should have an independent state tomorrow, those who say that Spain, the Spanish government, has to keep on intervening to prevent what is an illegal process in the eyes of the national constitution, and the middle ground, calling for everyone, of course, to sit down and speak. And we've heard that middle ground expressed from both sides. Again, we're in the company of Carlos Rivadavia. Carlos, you're the vice president of the Empresarios de Catalunya. That means the
Businessman Association. Yeah.
Businessman Association. You're also the CEO of your own business. We'll talk about that in a moment. First of all, how will this day be remembered is a question we asked our previous guest.
Well, for me, it's a sad day because this is the consummation of a very illegal act, in our opinion, from the association. The Parliament of Catalonia just really broke any law last September the 6th, and this is just the consequence, and it's very responsible.
So you stayed home. What are your thoughts on listening to the speech of the Prime Minister? Did he help or hurt your cause?
Well, I didn't stay home. I went around the city looking, for just how the referendum was going on, and really I saw a complete mess. A mess of people voting twice, 3 times. There was no absolute computer IT system controlling everything. This is really a performance. This is really a provocation by the Catalan regional government that I think is very unfair for the Catalan people as a whole.
How should Rajoy handle it now?
Well, of course, he should be very fair. I think they've been fair. Maybe it was a mistake to send the police when the mess was done. You know, really the mess started September the 6th, when the regional parliament passed some laws creating their own legal space. It's like if La Provence declares that the French constitution doesn't apply to La Provence. This is absolutely madness. That was the key, and that was the biggest problem. Huh? What to do today when the regional government is so disloyal and unfaithful, it's difficult to handle. Maybe not sending the police at all and let them do the performance as they did, because at the end they did the performance, plus they got some pictures, because yes, there were some, you know, police charges, which nobody likes, of course. I also saw people throwing rocks to police and throwing them chairs. So, I mean, this madness, if you're a responsible politician, you don't create this mess. You don't tell people to go to vote when the courts have suspended the referendum. You know, this is very responsible on President Puigdemont.
All right, and the Separatists, of course, arguing that they haven't gotten the respect they deserve from Madrid, that the fact that their status as a region is not being respected properly by the central authorities. First of all, let's talk about the short term. What's going to happen when the stock market opens Monday?
Well, probably will fall, of course. The Spanish stock market, IBEX 35, of course, is going to drop for some days. The thing is, there's so much instability and uncertainty in the next days. I think it's going to cost, depends on politicians. If they find a solution quick and the regional president just declares elections, meaning he appoints elections or he, you know, sets an election date, the tension, you know, will be diminished, of course, in the next days. We don't know. It's up to them, you know.
So you're not a hardliner. You're not saying throw him in jail.
No, I'm just saying, like any Democrat in Europe, I'm just saying the rule of law is for everyone, isn't it? You know, have you heard of any decision from the European Commission or the Strasbourg human rights decision saying that it's okay for a territory to declare a unilateral referendum? I think Spain is a rule of law country. I mean, you can see that today. It's democratic, there's comfort, you know, there's no oppression. I didn't see any oppression today.
Of course, the pictures from today tell a different story when you see them.
Well, specific pictures are bad, but why did you tell people to go to the voting polls when it's an illegal that the courts have suspended? You think it is fair? You think it is right if you're a responsible politician to tell the people to go to the voting polls when the courts have suspended? Come on.
Carlos Rivadulla, you're saying that the European Commission, the European Union will side squarely with Madrid.
Absolutely.
So whose job is it to try to ease the tension at this point, to step in and mediate?
Well, again, you have to play the rules within the game, you know, the field of game, you know. The regional parliament passed clearly unconstitutional law on September the 6th, like La Provence saying the French constitution doesn't apply.
But who steps in? Who acts as mediator?
I don't know, but the thing is, there's only one game in politics, which is played inside the field. If you place yourself outside the pitch, why should I, you know, it's your fault. Is it mine if you're outside the pitch?
All right, you're the CEO of EcoFrego. You make eco-friendly household cleaning items.
Exactly. We have a company. We produce basically a mopping bucket and eco-friendly detergents. We sell in many countries in Europe, including France.
And excuse me for saying it, it's so Catalonian, isn't it? Because Catalonia is known, especially Barcelona, as this vibrant place that's one of these places that more the haves than the have-nots when it comes to globalization.
Yes, it is. Barcelona is a very modern, vibrant, cosmopolitan city. We don't want to close ourselves. We don't want to be selfish. We don't want to be divisive like the regional separatist government. You know, we are not selfish people. And this movement is about selfishness and exclusion. I don't support this. I support a global world where all countries come together, and we, like in Europe.
But tell me concretely, in your company, what's the spoken language at work?
English and Spanish and Catalan, the three of them.
The three of them? So if employees don't speak Catalan, is it more difficult? Because that's the word we hear.
No, in our case, no. We have all sort of people talking so many languages, so we can combine our languages. It is true that for some companies and public institutions, if you don't speak Catalan, you don't get the job. So imagine you're in a hospital. You would choose, instead of choosing the right doctor or the best doctor, you choose the doctor who speaks Catalan first. The same with teachers, so meaning we are missing talent. We are missing talent out of putting a first filter based on language. So we don't care about the best doctor or the best teacher. First of all, they have to speak the language.
No language discrimination at Ecofrego, if I understand correctly.
Absolutely not.
Carlos Rivadullo, I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to turn now back to France 24's Sarah Morris. Sarah, it all started around 5 a.m. when parents who'd been occupying schools that were used for polling stations started to see the lines of people start to amass. And the night is far from over here in Barcelona, with some fearing that Spanish police may swoop and sequester the ballot boxes that are being counted.
It is a long night and many people are pretty worried about how it will all end, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, this vote is over and he says that it's been a failure. He said that basically...
Tell me now then, we've heard from the Spanish Prime Minister. He, as we were saying earlier, didn't issue threats to throw the president of Catalonia in jail. He did leave a little bit of a door open, but it was a very defiant speech. What happens next?
The Prime Minister has promised to give a speech tomorrow in Parliament, and he will be looking to try to rally the troops because he's a minority government. He's got one thing in his favour, and that is that the Citizens' Party is a Catalan party and it's a pro-unionist party, and so he may be able to count on that backing. But he will be looking at some point to pass, for instance, the budget, and he may find himself in a difficult situation with the Basque nationalists that have offered to support that budget but are not happy about how things are playing out in Catalonia. He will also have to really return to the business of the criticisms by parties like Podemos that have said that he needs to go, that he's part of the problem. Pablo Iglesias, the leader of Podemos, was pretty harsh earlier on. He said that there had been an attack not by Spain against Catalonia, but again by a party of violent people, he put it, and a party that was corrupt. And of course, Mariano Rajoy's party does have corruption allegations against it. I expect that Mariano Rajoy will be looking to defend himself tomorrow, and he may even talk about the corruption allegations facing PDCAT, which is Carlos Puigdemont's party. It could get pretty tit for tat tomorrow, but he will certainly be looking at how to diffuse this situation. One thing we don't know is, will there be that unilateral declaration of independence? And if that happens, Mariano Rajoy will have to look as to how does he diffuse the situation. What does he do? Does he try to negotiate this as the socialist leader Pedro Sanchez is asking him to do? Or does he actually use what we were saying earlier is the nuclear option, Article 155? Does he actually say he will intervene and somehow take over the running of Catalonia?
Yeah, we'll have one eye on Barcelona, one eye on Madrid, Sarah Morris, and a special edition of the France 24 debate on Monday after all that will unfold in the coming hours. From here at Barcelona's Catalunya Square, the night is far from over, but that's it for this special edition for now. Stay with us, more coverage to come on France 24.